It is 7 o'clock, so I'll call this meeting to order. Smithville Village Council, roll call.
Allen,
Here.
Haas,
Here.
Heicher,
Here.
Mullins,
Here.
Reed,
Here.
Thorne,
Here.
All right, you should have had received a copy of the minutes from our special meeting, the end of December. If you've had the opportunity to review those minutes, I would entertain a motion in a second to approve those.
Motion to approve the minutes from December 29th, 2020.
Second.
Okay, we have motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call.
Allen,
Yes.
Haas,
Yes.
Heicher,
Yes.
Mullins,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
All right, we do have no visitors, and the police chief will be joining us at our next meeting because he will have his report available to us for December, that meeting. I really don't have any other correspondence. And is there any old business? We had none on the agenda. Is there any old business from any members of council this evening? If there isn't any, we'll move into new business. The first thing we have on there is the December 2020 financial report. And actually you have a number of different things we've sent you. You should have the statement of cash position with month to date, and it also obviously has year to date totals. This shows obviously each of the funds in relationship to the total year of 2020. You can easily see the receipts and how we came in, against obviously the estimated receipts and what their actual receipts were for the year. And again, on the same side, the disbursements for each of those funds. If you look to the far right of that report, you will see the ending balances for each of those funds. And as you look at those, you can see the majority of those obviously are higher ending balances for December 31st of 2020 than it was January 1st of 2020. That's one of the documents you received. The other is the monthly financial report. Again, it shows each of our funds, shows the estimated revenues with actual revenue year to date, and then it shows appropriations as well. And again, if you look at those, you can see that we exceeded obviously the projected revenues in most of our funds. And then also you can see that in a lot of the funds, obviously the expenses came in under the budgeted amount. So again, we did well in regards to 2020. That is the one piece that I would entertain a motion in a second to approve. And that's the monthly financial report for December 2020. I would entertain a motion in a second.
Motion to approve the financial report for December 2020.
Second.
Second.
Pause.
Matt, okay. We have motion and second. Are there any questions on specifically the monthly financial report? Hearing none, roll call.
Haas,
Yes.
Heicher,
Yes.
Mullins,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
The other items that you should have received as far as in your agenda packet would be, again, the revenue report, which is the detailed report for revenue. Again, that's there for obviously December 31st. And again, it does show month to date along with year to date in each of the fund categories. As you can look at it, you'll be able to see again, as far as what we projected, expected revenues and what we actually collected. Again, I think that, looking at the year, obviously it's a testament to Pam's work in relationship to projecting, obviously for the year, because we came in, slightly above on each of those areas. And again, when I look at these reports, obviously it reminds me of how much I value what she brings to us in relationship to forecasting and putting the documents together for our annual budget and also appropriations. You also then will receive the detailed expense report for December 31st, 2020. Again, showing the same information, month to date expenditures in each of the detailed line items. along with the year-to-date expenses in those line items. The last item that you would have gotten from a financial standpoint was the income tax revenue report through December. So it shows the complete report for the year. When you look at that for the total for the year, obviously, when we look at it compared to annual withholding, we came in comparatively to last year. The individual business withholdings, again, we see a net of 22,393. And again, we did very well. Of course, what we have to keep in mind is that we did have the refund that we made to the state of Ohio in that amount that basically that they had overpaid us in a prior period. But again, as you look at that document, you can see we tracked very well, especially considering the pandemic. So those are the financial items that each of you received. Are there any questions for Pam or myself regarding those documents? If there aren't any, I think the next item on the new business that I'll go into is, again, I sent you an email, and then also in the packet, we included basically a statement. And this is in regards to obviously the ongoing issue relating to 201 plan as it exists between obviously the community here in Smithville and Worcester. As most of you know, back in January of 2019, we began with discussions with them regarding their request to move the red line. And again, to that discussion and that process continued to the point that the Wayne County Planning Commission met, and they in their meeting made the recommendation to leave the red line as is, not granting Worcester the right in which to move that red line closer to Smithville. Again, too, in those discussions, I've raised a couple things to them that we would require for us to consider amending that red line. One would be that if we were to agree with any change that was made to the red line, it would be the last request of them to basically move the red line any further eastward towards the village of Smithville. If we were to approve what they requested, they would bring them within 1.2 miles of the village limits on Smithville Western Road. We feel as though that, that is a reasonable expectation on our part. And yet they have indicated they would never agree, obviously, to tie their hands and not requesting additional land in the future. So given that, from my standpoint, and I think council's in support of the previous statements, is that that's then a non-starter from the standpoint of our position. The other issue, obviously, is the impact that it has from the standpoint of the community financially and indirectly to us as a result of the impact upon Green Local. Again, I forwarded to you what they have submitted, and basically what happened was after it was at the Planning Commission, it did go to NEFCO, which is a regional council of government, which is multi-county. There, basically, they heard, obviously these disagreements or recommendations from each of the counties. That board then obviously researched, and they came back, and eventually in November, they did adopt obviously the district-wide plan, which included Wayne County. And again, they upheld Wayne County's decision not to move the red line. Usually that document is done about every 7 years, though it may take longer because of the process. And basically, of course, at that point in time, I would have assumed that, it was done for another 7-year period. Again, too, they passed it in November. At some point in December, Worcester came back and is now requesting an amendment of the actual plan that was just adopted by NEFCO. And what they have to do is they submitted documents with the Wayne County Planning Commission, again, basically to ask for them to amend the very document which was just approved. And again, too, what I gave to you was obviously what was sent out from Wayne County Planning Department in relationship to the request with the maps showing the areas that they're requesting. And actually the areas requesting now is larger than the area before, because it does go north of Smithville Western Road before the other stopped at Smithville Western Road and was only south of that and over to Guyers Chapel Road. Again, we need to, obviously by Friday, I need to submit a statement on Smithville's position because the meeting with the Wayne County Planning Commission is going to be a week from tomorrow at 3 p.m. So again, we need to submit our position by Friday, and that's where I drafted a response. Again, I used a lot of the materials that we've obviously utilized before, but I did update it, and I specifically brought in some of the new things that would have been obviously transpired since we had last made a written statement to them. If you've had the, I guess, the opportunity to read that statement, what I would ask is, if there's any questions from me concerning, basically the position that I've put forth as a response. And again, too, whether or not you have any questions. And again, I guess what I'm looking for ultimately is for, obviously a vote to support the statement on behalf of the Village of Smithville as council. So at this point, I guess I'll throw it out for any questions that you may have.
Yeah, Mayor, first, I appreciate the enthusiasm you're showing for defending our village lines and our village services. I like the letter. I read it several times. The question is mostly, Smithville is the closest geographic municipality to Worcester. If you look on the map, there aren't a lot of options that aren't already Worcester. The next closest one being Apple Creek, out Route 250 from the city of Worcester. Have we, or do we know, or has there been any attempt from the city of Worcester to do something similar to what they're trying to do with Smithville to the village of Apple Creek?
Yeah. The thing is, and what's unique is obviously because of closeness and proximity we are to one another. If you look at the master plan, the red lines in a lot of areas do not even meet each other. Basically, the red lines, there's unclaimed space in between those communities. So if a community wanted to change and increase their basically their facilities planning area, their FPA area, then as long as there isn't another community that's already part of theirs, then there's no dispute, and they generally would allow that to happen, obviously through the process. But we unfortunately are as close as we are. So in this case, any requests that they have obviously are to take land away that's currently in our facilities planning area. And again, you look around Wayne County, there's very little overlap at all in regards to that. Because if you look at it, there's a lot of areas that really are not part of anyone's facility planning area. So, and again, why this document is important is because this is a document required by the EPA. Basically what it says is if there's going to be development, if it's in your facilities planning area, that is the area that they would expect that entity to come to ask for services. And that's why Worcester is attempting to move that line, because they would like to provide services to areas that are not in their FPA. Other questions? And appreciate that, Matt.
The only other question I might add, and it's just a discussion, and I have no idea. I think I already asked this question. Do we have any idea what Worcester's end game is here? What are they trying to, why are they trying to do this? It's not all just, about sewer lines in case someone comes in. Obviously, there is something going on in Smithville Western and Guyers Chapel. The AEP has opened up twice as much power that they had less than a year ago in that area. So something's going there. We don't know what it is, but something is in the works in that area. It seems to me that there is something coming business-wise, something fairly large, manufacturing possibly, that we're just not aware of.
Yeah. And John,
Has anyone heard anything different than?
Well, their new water tower is within a mile of this area that they want to annex within our FPA area. It's a quick throwaway to the north end of Worcester if they were to do residential building in these what are now currently just fields, what I can see on the map here and
right.
Driving by. That's only my conjecture, is that it would be for residential, because most of Worcester's commercial area, their business development area is out back Orville Road, where Noble Drive, Tech 4, and all of that is in that area. And so I don't know that they would make this area for their business area, but
I would find it hard to believe that they would put that much infrastructure into that much electrical infrastructure in that area for residential.
And
But-
again, John, I
It's
appreciate your
true.
question.
It doesn't mean squat what I'm saying, but I'm just trying to throw it out there to see if anybody has any other ideas.
Well, and again, that question was posed to them directly multiple times by myself and through this process. They indicate that it's just good planning, that it's just
Yeah.
good 20-year planning. Yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly, that obviously the urgency that they have in which to ask that this be changed, and yet they obviously are not sharing anything other than that response. I do know in general terms, the area that is north of Smithville Western would be for residential, is the indication. But the area, that would be south of Smithville Western and east to Guyers Shovel, that area would be for obviously manufacturing of some sort. I think it would be an extension of what you already see there in regards to the manufacturing development there. But again, I think that there is any number of individuals that have speculated there may be something, but obviously any response has only been that it's good 20-year planning on their part. So any other questions? And again, I will just say, if you noticed, what I tried to do was we utilized obviously the position of the Wayne County master plan, which obviously the Wayne County had went to extensive efforts in which to solicit input to develop a master plan for the county. And their plan emphasizes, makes a high priority, the preservation of agricultural character and also agricultural land. And again, too, we reference that because we believe that's a strong point in relationship to why it shouldn't be granted. And again, too, because there's other areas that they can grow. We also utilized, obviously, Worcester's own planning document and a chart that they have that indicates the number of acres that they currently have available for manufacturing of different types or classes. So again, we use those documents because they're planning documents, and that's what we should be guided by, in our thinking. So, but are there other questions specific as to the statement? Because again, what I will do is obviously the statement will be included with our response to the Wayne County Planning Commission. So that way it'll be available to the members of that group that will be meeting next Wednesday to obviously consider and to make some sort of decision.
I appreciate, Mayor. I think it's very well written, and I actually read it a couple of times as well. And I was thinking, Tom, you do have it in you. So I think, are we able to make a motion to approve this, or is there something we need to do before that? For you to present this, we need to approve it to go to planning or not?
No, you can just approve, obviously the statement. And again, I'm in asking you folks, that way then it's coming from obviously not just myself and the position that I have, but it obviously has the weight of council itself as far as position of the village. And that's why I'm asking for you to.
I think we all agreed the last time we talked about this. So if no one's opposed to it, I'd like to make the motion then to approve this response for the, what do you want to say? The red line plan. I don't know how to word that, but
the 201 amendment
201,
request.
Yes, thank you.
I will second that.
I would
All right.
third it if I can.
Sure. So we have a motion and a second to approve, obviously the statement of position that will be presented. Are there any further questions on the statement? And if there are, yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. And I think I
Sure.
may have asked this question already, and it's not directly related to the statement, but is this, do we think this is the last time that we'll have to defend ourselves against the city of Worcester in this regard, or is this something that they're just going to try to wear down over?
I guess I don't know that I have that answer. It will probably be a question that I will ask, obviously, some of the officials in Wayne County, simply because I guess my thought was that, just in layman's thoughts was when NEFCO said no, and, literally just did the plan. I don't know what on basis you asked for an amendment or plan that just went through that process and they were denied. Nothing has changed other than they're asking for more land. And again, my understanding, NEFCO said it could be amended at any time, but my belief was it could be amended if, in fact, both parties had come to an agreement, meaning it isn't something that's in stone, written in stone for 7 years. If two parties come into obviously an agreement to change something. Obviously, we haven't come to an agreement relating to any kind of change. Obviously, they're just on their own arbitrarily presenting this. So that would be my question, because it just seems as though if the process has already said no, at what point does community respect the decision of the individuals and the groups that have said no to it? So.
Yeah, and along that line, just the last point I'll make is, and we don't have to do it today, but to consider something for posterity for the day that comes when we're not here as members of council and mayor, for the next group to understand that this is something that has been going and is that we feel is the will of our village, for posterity. So I don't know what that would look like, but some type of guidance document or something to say 10 years down the road, we might all be different folks here.
Sure. And again, I guess, that's one of the things that, obviously for an agreement to be arrived between the two communities, that's what I've asked for, something in writing that obviously would be a commitment that would be binding. One of the things I have done in between meetings, that if in fact we come to a place that we have sit down meeting with obviously Worcester, I did reach out to Joe Reed and I did ask him, and he has agreed to be involved with any meetings that we would have, simply from the standpoint that, he would join me in any meetings in relationship to the discussion that we would have. But again, at this point, a number of people would advise, unless they're willing to seriously commit to obviously the issues that we have, there's little point in meeting, basically if it's just for them to try to convince us to give in to their demand. So given that, like I say, obviously at the point in time, if they agree that the concerns that we have are valid and are willing to address those in writing in some form, then we would agree to sit down, and I would include obviously Joe, and obviously Jason would be involved in that process as well as our solicitor too. But again, too, I would like it to be obviously something that's more permanent as well, from the standpoint of not continually going through this. So, any other questions? Yeah.
Just curious, Mayor, what's the expected timeline for a response from NEFCO on this? So the commission has to submit it to NEFCO in some timeline, deadline, I'm assuming, and then NEFCO has to decide on that and then get back to all parties.
Correct. And I'm not certain as far as how fast the Planning Commission might respond or make that decision. They may very well make it that day or following that. And I'm assuming, I don't know, this obviously started with them, and I'm assuming would follow the same process. Then it would go forward to NEFCO for their consideration. But again, too, I know that the last time it wasn't necessarily a quick process in relationship between obviously the initial recommendation locally and eventually the approval of a plan, there by NEFCO in November. So, but again, that's something that I probably will have better understanding after, obviously meeting with Wayne County and asking them some of the questions I have. I just myself was quite surprised that, that the process would allow for an amendment for basically a plan that had just been obviously approved and basically denied. So any other questions?
I guess more of a statement, partially a question. I would also be pretty interested in knowing what exactly their appeals or amendment process is, or if there's any regulations that limit that. Because to me, it seems like there's only so many times that the same or a slightly different request can be made before, at what point is enough enough? especially if later requests are just going to be, okay, you didn't grant our smaller request, let's add on, 105 acres. That it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of fair play on the other side of this.
Yeah. And again, I think that that's something, I guess, I think maybe, as I said in my email to you today, I think maybe for us to have some conversation, because, I think that, obviously I have posed these types of questions, but I would welcome your input as well in relationship to, some of these questions and asking for an official response regarding them. So, yeah, like I said, just to not be continually going to meetings. I like seeing the county commissioners. I like seeing the other elected officials, but like I say, sometimes, I do have other things I could be doing with that time. So, but are there any other questions? If there aren't any, roll call.
Eicher,
Yes.
Mullins,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Haas,
Yes.
All right. Are there any other items of new business that council would have to bring before us this evening? Hearing none, I will move on into liaison reports. And equipment, Scott?
Yeah, I talked to Mike today. He didn't have anything for the group, so.
Okay. Larry Pryor.
No, nothing. Our meeting is postponed till the 13th.
Okay. There's nothing from the police department. Joe, do you have anything for Veterans Memorial?
I've not received anything new from Dana or the rest of Veterans Memorial.
Okay. Then Matt, do you have anything for Parks and Trees?
Nothing particular for me, other than we'll just continue to work through the process of trying to obtain some grant money for the park.
Sounds good. And then John, Streets and Sidewalk.
Nothing for streets and sidewalks, Mayor, but would like to say thank you for all your work on this 201 deal.
Appreciate that, John. And when you come back, when you're back in the area, if you want to send me an email, then maybe we'll sit down and talk about, as far as sidewalks and engineering at some point.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Thank you. Then as far as finance and personnel, Tricia.
No, I do believe I'm waiting on the mayor to go over the emergency plan for 2021. So as soon as I hear back from him, I will get that to you.
It's on my list. I made a new list. Are there any other items? If not, there's a few things under the mayor's report that I would share with you. A couple things on the utility side, since we have last met or talked. There was a check valve in the well field that was not functioning properly. The reason that that was an issue was we found that we had water that would actually backflow into the wells from the system. Obviously, that's something that affected a number of things that we were unaware of, but we have contracted for Ohio Drilling to come in and repair that. In the interim, what we've done is shut that down. So we no longer have that issue to it's been repaired. Also, as part of this, one of the things that Tom from AgriSludge, our operator of the plant, water treatment plant, they were concerned about the actual readings of the flow meters in the water treatment plant. So they brought in a firm to actually basically to test those, and they had the ability to use another type of meter that could measure the flow inside of the pipe. And in doing that, they found that the flows did not match what our basically meter flow was indicating. In further investigation, what they found was, if you recall, about 4 years ago, because the problems that we were having with water quality, the water treatment plant, we had that plant totally rebuilt, basically from walls in, everything was replaced. What we found was, in further investigation, is those flow meters were not wired properly. Thus, that was the reason why we were not getting accurate readings. We have corrected that, but what that means is that the flow rate changed from what we thought was about 60,000 gallons per day to 100,000 gallons per day that was flowing through the plant or that we were producing. Of course, one of the things that raised concern is that obviously some of the things we based decisions on was based upon those flows. But I did reach out to Tom and myself reached out to the CT just to touch base with them in relationship to our water tower. And again, too, if you recall, what we looked at was obviously trying to make certain we have excess capacity beyond our daily flow. But obviously, one of the issues we had concern as large as we went was as far as water quality. That's why, if you recall, one of the things we added in the new tank was obviously a mixing system that would make certain the water was obviously mixed regularly, so you didn't have water quality because of the size that we built in relationship to daily flow. Knowing that we have a higher daily flow actually will alleviate concerns in relationship to that. We still obviously have storage capacity of 2.5 times what our daily flow is, which is still adequate. But out of that, some of the other things that we wanted to look at, and I've asked, basically Mike and Becky are going to work on the first quarter. What I asked for was basically an analysis, again, an average analysis of what our daily production is versus our basically our consumption, our billed consumption. So what they're going to look at, and of course, because we read meters quarterly, what we're going to look at is the end of the first quarter. Now that the problem's been solved, we'll be able to look at what we're producing and have a closer comparison to what we actually bill. We know the two aren't going to match, but we want to see what kind of difference there is in that to see if that flow then matches what we're billing. The other thing is that it impacts is, of course, one of the things when we looked at inflow, as far as the sewer plant, we usually used a calculation of how much water was being produced daily that basically we were putting into our water lines. Then what we looked at as it compared to the amount of flow that was coming through the sewer plant that we were treating. And obviously you would have more coming through the sewer plant. But again, too, we based the amount of inflow during even what we call dry periods, when we shouldn't see a lot of infiltration, we always still had a big gap. Well, obviously now with the correct numbers on the production side, obviously that's going to impact what we're looking at as far as the differential between what the water plant's producing and what we're treating in the sewer plant. So again, we're going to look at that again as part of the discussions that we're having with BPA. But I just want to kind of share that with you folks so that, you kind of had an idea of some things. I guess one thing I learned is that continually sometimes, what you would hope to believe to be accurate or something that is correct, I guess it's not a bad thing to always question. And again, too, I think going forward, we do believe that we are getting good numbers. So I think based upon that, we should be in a position. I'm thankful too, again, that Tom Abraham just had this nagging feeling and question in relationship to what he saw there, that he, obviously investigated enough to bring in some individuals that basically determined the issue that we had there. But I wanted to share that. The other thing that I did email out to you folks also was the water tower schedule. I don't remember which one of you asked, but had asked what the schedule was. I think it was probably just like the day of or the day after we got the schedule sent to me. So I did forward to you. And again, it shows you the timeline for basically the different processes and to the final closeout of the project. Again, obviously this is a projection based upon, what our best estimates are. But again, there could be changes based upon weather or other obstacles that we might encounter. But I did provide that for you. So you'll have that to look at as well. And on that note, and I did have this on my list as well, and I couldn't remember, I thought one of council, and I was thinking maybe it was Scott, the point in time that we talked about as far as demolition of the old tower, we talked about the issue as it related to the use of that land. And the fact that obviously the solid waste district looking to relocate and the issues that raised in relationship to the appropriateness of the old water tower. And, we had talked about the idea of possibly going out and approaching the property owner of that land and see if we could negotiate or come up with an agreement that would allow the solid waste district to remain at that current location for recycling. And was it you, Scott?
Yes, sorry, I had a stuck mute button. Yeah, we had discussed that particularly based off some community feedback that the people that we talked to didn't want it at the site of the old water, or what will be the old water tower.
And I guess why I raised that, I was checking my memory, but if you are the individual, maybe me and you could plan on getting together at some point, talk about it. We might then, from what we come up with, I'll obviously reach out to Jason to throw some ideas to him. And those ideas that we come up with, and if he signs off that there's something that could be done, then maybe we could go and obviously have a discussion with the individuals regarding that. But I, again, didn't want to leave it go. It's obviously not going to happen some period of time, but I want us to kind of make certain we move forward on that, so we have a resolution and answer, because then also too, that will impact, obviously, at some point, Jason's going to have to develop some temporary easements for the company to be able to actually demo the old water tower. And obviously that impacts some of the people that obviously that have the issues in the use of space. So I think if we can come up with an answer so we can tell them this is what how we've resolved the situation, I think that would be useful. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
all right, then I'll reach out to you and see if we can't sit down and brainstorm, and then, like I say, come up with some ideas. I think that's it. The only other thing is I didn't forward to you folks, and it's totally up to you. We get also basically, we get annual, but we also get quarterly analysis of our utilities. As far as, if you recall, we do have a broker that basically handles as far as purchase of those. If any of you are interested in seeing the spreadsheets they sent to us, I'd be glad to forward them, but I did not forward you enough already sometimes. But if any of you want to see those, let me know, and I'd be glad to forward those through an email. So, any questions for myself? If there aren't any, again, we do have no bills to be paid because we paid all the bills before year end at our last meeting. So that would be something that we don't need to do in this meeting. I would just bring to your attention the BPA meeting is Monday, January 11th. So Trish, aren't you going to come to that? You don't have anything going on January 11th, do you?
I'm sure Michael has a doctor's appointment sometime.
Okay. Well, isn't that the night of the football game?
I said during the day.
Okay. Anyways, then our next council meeting is January 19th. So if there's no other business brought before council, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
And a second.
Second, Hawes.
All right. We have motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Then we'll be adjourned. And I will say is, at least on our end, B and Beverly are grateful for what obviously was done in relationship to the booster that we have, because at least it seems as though the Zoom meetings are going much better for us. We can actually see people. We actually know who's making motions and who's making seconds. So, but with that, the meeting will be called adjourned.
Real quick, Mayor.
Yeah.
I wanted to add to say thanks to everybody through the rough 2020 year. Everybody did such a great job with liaisons, and I think we have a really great council, and I'm just proud to be a part of it. So thank you to everybody and the mayor. Pam, you save us all the time. Thank you. Jason, love having you here. So I think we're in a really good place for the village. So I just appreciate being part of that.
I'll second that as well.
All right. Happy
Thanks.